thing on our agenda today is demos. So does either team have a preference on who goes first to kind of talk about what they worked on this week? That would be a no. I don't remember which issue numbers we're on. So who had the lowest issue number? Let's start, do it low to high. I can look it up if we need to.
I think that's us deleting. Okay. Yeah, Sheila, do you want to pull it up, or I've got it as well?
I can pull it up. Let me see. All right. Hold on now. I was trying to slide everything over to here. Okay, so can you see my screen where I have like smart shopping list?
We sure can.
Okay, great. All righty, so I went ahead and just added a couple of items to the list so we can have something to kind of mess around here. But if, let's say if I press delete here, like on Cracker Jacks, we have a modal that pops up, are you sure you want to delete Cracker Jacks? So it actually asks you, the particular item, and then you can hit no cancel, and the modal disappears, or you can hit yes delete, and the modal disappears, and then it also deletes it. One thing that Connie did that she worked on as well, it's like if you press 9 or 27, it actually escapes out of it as well. So I think you did that with using like the area try to remember if it's area, which thing you actually use here, but I know it's just definitely accessibility.
Yeah, we just added some event listeners. So if you hit escape on your keyboard, it'll close the modal. And then we added some event listeners for tabbing and shift tabbing when you're on no cancel or yes delete, and it will basically change the focus of your keyboard while you're kind of in the modal. So that kind of your keyboard stays within the modal. Otherwise, like if you don't if you don't have that piece, if you start tabbing through, it'll go no cancel, yes delete, yes, and then it'll go return you back into like the regular app. So we added that functionality as well.
All righty, but do you want me to switch over to you?
Sure, yeah, we can kind of just walk through the code really quick.
Yeah. All righty, here we go.
Yep, so we added a new modal component, which kind of has most of the modal HTML. We also made updates to shopping lists we actually made a lot of changes to app.js, where basically we've got the modal component rendering kind of down here. We've got basically a couple handlers for the modal, and we created a state variable called show modal to kind of track true or false should we be showing the modal. So in the, I believe, shopping list item, we've added this delete button, and so on click we have a handle modal open function, and so it opens the modal, and that I think is an app. So we have a couple handlers here. We set the show modal state to true, which shows the modal with a class that we kind of toggle. And then when you are in the modal component, that's where you can cancel, which will on click handle the modal close, or you can click yes delete, which on click deletes the actual item. So that is where we have our delete item function here, which actually deletes from Firestore. Just pretty simple. It just follows this chaining specifically with this dot delete, then closes the modal. That's kind of the main functionality. To get some of the accessibility, that's where we had some help, I think, from Yenli and Ander. So specifically on the modal component, we have a use effect when the component mounts. And so so if the show modal is true and we're showing the modal, then we are adding this event listener on key down, which is kind of defined on here. So we're adding these event listeners where if you hit escape, then it closes the middle. So that's 27. We've got this logic on if you are, if the user hits tab and not shift while on delete, it puts the focus on cancel. And then if you hit tab and shift while you're on cancel, it puts the focus on delete. So it kind of just makes a loop so that you kind of, the keyboard focus stays within that modal. So we add those event listeners, and when you first open the modal, it puts the focus on cancel. That's a bit of an accessibility thing as well, just making sure we don't put it on delete since it is a destructive action. We don't want users to accidentally hit yes delete. So we wanted to make sure the focus is on canceling in case they need to cancel. And then Yenli's help here, we when the component unmounts, we are removing these event listeners. And I think specifically down here, anytime there's a change in the show modal state and the handle modal, well, I don't know actually, Yenli, like if you can just explain. I think the main thing is like we put all of these event handlers into this use effect, and we added this. I'm not as familiar with the use effect hook in this array down here, but I assume it's like when show modal changes or when handle modal close changes, then we are, and when the component unmounts, we're removing the event listeners.
So the use effect is that it depending on you use the dependency array to say like if there's a change in these dependencies, then you re-render. So in some cases, because your modal open and closes, you want that to reflect. And then the line 37, because these are event listeners, before putting this function in here, it was like constantly creating a lot. So that's why use effects have this this cleanup function, which I'm still wrapping my head around as well. So it's not an easy thing, and how you sequence out your use effect can get really complicated. I recently saw in our code base by one of the senior engineers, like our use effect was like an empty function, and there was a cleanup function that did all these crazy things, and that was all it did. And I was like, what is this syntax? And he's like, well, because you don't want to do anything until you exit out. And I was like, really? So yeah, it's interesting to look into, and definitely like I want to read that article that April said she will share after this. But it's something to think about, like the reason why defining handle key events in the use effect is a good idea, because you only want to run it when it's available, and you're using like the closure method in here, because event listener can be costly, especially used with like the use ref. Go ahead, April.
Yeah, just to kind of build on that, one of the things that I've learned on the use effect is if you are utilizing a function within it that is only used in that use effect, you should put it inside, because anytime you have something that you're calling from your use effect, it considers that something that can change. But sometimes if it's a prop, if it's a function, whatever it is, and therefore it has to be a dependency. And sometimes that can get a little bit tricky. And I know in particular, like in our case with state, we sometimes ignore that ESLint rule because we don't actually want to monitor that change. And so we're saying, don't look at that. But generally speaking, especially if it's a prop, the reason you need to add it to the dependency array is that the use effect needs to know you're using that inside of me, but it could change. And so I need to make sure I have the latest information. So that's just kind of a little bit more of what I've come to learn in regards to that dependency array for both the use effect as well as like the use callback, and those items where that dependency array is necessary. So since handle modal close is called from within, but it's a prop, that's why it's required as a dependency.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a good learning experience. I think we probably, to Nick's point, like we probably could have did a simple like confirm or something, but I think that honestly, I learned a lot just building a modal for the first time in React and accessibility and these event handlers. So it's a really good learning experience. So yeah.
It's a really good job. It is, modals are very tricky. And as you quickly found out, in particular with accessibility stuff and getting the focus right. And all in all, you guys did a really, really great job with that. So awesome. I did want to mention too, that there is a native function or element function. I'm not sure exactly what it's termed, but the portal that exists within React. And some of like, it's a really nice feature for two reasons. One, it gets its own root element, so it lives outside of the DOM tree. And so you get some of those conflicts and things that can occur sometimes when you're trying to render something within the DOM, but then rise it up to make it be a modal and Z-index and all of that stuff. You kind of get for free with the portal. And the other thing is it's considered a first class component. So it will all like bubble up events, those kind of things all flow through the portal in a way that they don't through a standalone modal that you've built and just risen above. So it's a really cool option, and maybe something you might want to play around with, on your own sometime.
I have a question.
Mhm.
And my question is, because I knew about it, but since we were doing kind of the modal like from scratch without using it, I was like, well, let me see how this works out. But I've used it before, and that's React modal. So I didn't know, like, would it have been better to maybe use that, or what we did here, was that the better way to go about it?
I don't know if it's better or worse. I think there's advantages and disadvantages to both options. I just pointed out because it is an option, and I know in my experience, modals can sometimes give a lot of roadblocks, and the portal seems to smooth some of those out, just because it is like I say, that first class component. So it gets those little extra, loses some of that friction when you're using it. But it's a learning curve. You have to work out how to use it and how to set it up, and it does still have accessibility focused stuff that you have to do. So I used it in my portfolio, but I haven't made it accessible yet. So. I can send you guys that link if you wanted to peek at it. You can't judge too hard though, because that's the portfolio I wrote before I got work, and I haven't fixed it up. So it's younger me code. Awesome.
Great.
Well, if nobody else has any other questions or comments, let's go ahead and take a look at Andrew and Nick's work.
Yeah, so ours was a little tricky. We kind of thought we'd start with doing a little bit of an overview of what we were actually trying to do, so that when we explain all of the different functions we created, it'll hopefully make more sense. So our task was to have the list sort all of the items by basically how soon you're going to need to buy each one again. So we already had the list sorting by purchase interval, which is what we've called in the database that estimate that the app calculates for the time between purchases, the number of days between purchases that it estimates that you have for a specific item. So purchase interval is, just a integer that basically stays the same until you make another purchase, then it gets recalculated. But what we actually wanted to do was sort by how soon you're going to buy them, not the interval, which like the difference, I think the example that I gave when I was explaining this in the GitHub comments, like if you have one item that you have on your list, like let's say apples, and there's a purchase interval of 8 days, so you buy it every 8 days, you buy apples, or that's what it predicts. And then you have another thing like bananas that you are expected to buy every 15 days. You might think apples will go higher up on the list, but if you just bought apples, then you actually won't buy them for maybe 7 more days. And if you haven't bought bananas in a long time, even though it's a bigger purchase interval, it's expecting that you're kind of due to buy them if it's been more than a couple weeks. So we have a purchase interval in the database. We have the last purchase date, and what we needed to do was figure out, based on that information, how many days are left. So the last purchase date plus the number of days would be the day that you're estimated to buy it. This is the big date. And then what's the difference between that date and the current date? Is it going to happen in 3 days? Was it expected to happen 3 days ago? That's the number, which we've kind of called that in the code days to purchase, the number of days left before a purchase. And that number changes over time. As you get closer to the day the app is expecting you to purchase something, the number will like shrink. So that's what we wanted to sort by. And then the other part of our task was to display, some way visually and also a little helpful screen reader label to let people know whether items were gonna need to be purchased soon, kind of soon, not for a while, or if it's an item that you haven't purchased in like twice the amount of time that it kind of thinks that you're, the estimate of purchase interval. So like if you're going to purchase apples every 8 days and it's been 16 days and you haven't purchased apples, then that seems to be something that maybe you're not buying anymore. So that becomes inactive. So I think Nick is going to kind of walk through how we implemented that in the code. And then I'll show kind of what it looks like on the other side and some of the accessibility stuff.
Yeah, so let me share my screen here. First of all, can everyone see this okay? Because I have this on like a vertical.
Pretty small. You can zoom in.
It's kind of small. Okay.
I think if
yeah,
you just command plus.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And you can also collapse your Explorer window on the left.
Oh, yes. Okay.
There we go.
Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to go over basically all the different helper functions we made for this, which there were a bunch for this issue. So the first one is get days to purchase. And this is where we get the number that is basically the core sorting metric that we ultimately use.
Sorry, Nick, could you make it a little bigger?
Yeah. Is that a little better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. So this, what we get from days to purchase is basically the main thing we use for sorting. So first we, if the item has been purchased before, the next purchase date is going to be the purchase interval days, because purchase interval does represent a measurement of days from the last purchase date. So that's what we're doing here. And then the other possibility is there's no purchase history for the item. So this is maybe like the first time you've added it. So in that case, you estimate that it's going to need to be bought again from the, again, using that purchase interval, but it's going to be, instead of from the last time you purchased it, it's, you know, it's going to be this time when you just put it on the list. So we have a created at, and we just use a server timestamp for that. So that's that one. And then we have two others that are also going to be used to help with what ends up being in our sort. So the other thing we have to do is determine if an item is considered inactive. If it's been purchased before, we're comparing the time elapsed since the last purchase date to the purchase interval. And then if it's not been purchased, we are doing the same thing, but again, using that created at and using that server timestamp of when the user first adds the item. And so finally, we have this get item status, which is going to basically, this corresponds to in the AC where for this issue, there was there's those 4 bullet points on basically each item can be put into basically 4 categories. It's either inactive, or it's going to be purchased soon, or kind of soon, or not soon. So this is where we basically use that days to purchase interval that we calculated in the first function to basically break the items up into these 4 categories. And then finally, our sort list items is our compare function for our sort. So kind of using all the properties that we calculated from our different helper functions up to this point, we are then basically doing our actual sorting work inside of here. Yeah, and then we, all that leads to basically doing this dot sort line on the array of items. So any questions? Okay. I think.
Wait, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen. Yeah, one thing that we did decide to do is, let's see, we decided that we would restructure like the array of item objects from what we originally got from Firestore to be something that was like a little cleaner and neater to work with on the other end, and also had the ID like embedded in there, since Firestore like separates them out, which is a little different from a lot of other databases because it's on the document. So when we pass it through,
sorry, can I make the request to have the text a little bit bigger again?
Yeah, I'm just about to do that.
Perfect.
Because I just realized it's very small.
Great.
So yeah, when we pass it through, we have a nice, neat little item object. And the two things that we did here, because we have that function over in shopping list, get item status, we specifically decided that we would just have a property on item that held like one of 4 little like string options, and then we could reuse these as the like class modifiers for the CSS class. So What we did to make it nice and neat to work with later, because we probably, this is like what it looks like now, which is not, we didn't bother with, let me pull this out. We didn't bother with doing a lot of like fancy things to the checkbox because we figured, well, we're going to probably change it in the next step. So we just put a really simple little color. But we were thinking the way that we set up the CSS classes, we just have this little modifier if the item has a specific status on the label and also on the checkbox, I think, or yeah, we do. So we can style these however we want down the line, and we don't have to change anything about the markup, which will be good. And then the other thing that we do in here for people who can't see the color coding, but still want to, you know, be able to understand what the list is doing, what the different categories are, we have a little visually hidden span that says, spits out like in, you know, human readable text, need to buy soon, need to buy kind of soon. So as you use a screen reader with the list, it'll say something like cereal, need to buy soon, apples, need to buy kind of soon. And so it's not visible to people who are just looking at it because it's visually hidden, but it is there for screen readers. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. I could also explain why we added the created at timestamp, because that's kind of a little choice that we made when we decided how to tackle this issue. We kind of like polled the team and we realized that there's not really a way to meaningfully sort new items that don't have any purchase history, because you can't do that math with the last purchase date. There is no last purchase date. It's never been bought before. But we thought that we all kind of thought it seemed weird for a new item that you said that you're going to buy soon to be added and dropped to the bottom of the list and shown as inactive. So to fix that issue, we added a little timestamp for when the item's created, and we use that as a fallback whenever there's not a last purchase date. And we figured, you know, that kind of makes sense. If you put something on your list and you say you're going to buy it soon, maybe you haven't said when you purchased it, but it's probably a better estimate than saying it's inactive to say, well, if you said you're going to purchase it soon, let's say 7 days from when you created the item, and then it'll get, you know, smarter as you purchase it. But that way there's some kind of a fairly meaningful way to calculate whether an item, where it should be on the list and whether it should be inactive. And again, we use that to figure out if a new item will be inactive. We do it if it's been, you know, more than twice the purchase interval estimate from when it was created, so we don't have a last purchase date. So this all sounds kind of confusing when I say it out loud, but hopefully hopefully it's sort of understandable. Questions?
For what it's worth, it actually made sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that helped me a lot.
I actually, I think I even pointed it out on your PR. Like that was actually a really great choice. I know that you guys had discussed it kind of at the very beginning of that doesn't make sense. Why is it inactive? I just added it to my list. I clearly intend to purchase it. So that was a really great solution.
Yeah, it was only slightly harder. So we figured, we could MVP and just go with this simple thing, but it was all we had to do was add one more date and just have a couple, like if we don't have a last purchase, then use this twice. So it was pretty simple to implement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I would think that's a great decision, and we should bring this kind of requirement back to TCL and see if Andrew and Stacy would update it, because it doesn't make sense. Like the previous AC, yeah.
I think that there's a few small little things in the description for the issue that are a little confusing. Like it says that items that have only been purchased once should be inactive. And that definitely, I think it's what it's intending to say is that items that have never been purchased, because that would be a problem to calculate. So it does, I think it's a little bit, it could be reworded a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if you want to, if you have thoughts and you want to contribute and change that, like Stacy and Andrew are very open to taking your input. And if you wanted to write something and just submit something directly to the template repo, like I think they would really appreciate, because this is the issue that almost every team have tripped up on. And
Yeah,
even
it's very
myself.
complicated to like.
Yeah.
It's so hard to explain it. I think like it's once you understand what you're supposed to do, it's pretty conceptually easy. And I think I kind of assumed we were going to be doing this, so it was a little bit like simpler to know what we're going to do, because I had been already thinking about it. But it's very tricky. So it's the wording could be like saying it clearly is not super easy.
Yeah. This is where story writing bonus points, if you want to do that for TCL, is to give back. And like, you know, I think one other issue, the thing is trying to make it simple for the teams to build. Like this is the process where like you're trying to make it simple and end up being more confusing for requirements. But yeah, that was really great work. I came back and I was looking at the code and I was like, this team don't need me.
It was definitely, we definitely do. I think I've learned so much this week, and with the accessibility stuff, it's so helpful. And you always give really great refactor suggestions, which maybe I should take the time and go through and look at, you know, how to do that. But there's so many things that are inefficient that you do when you're working through a problem with another person and you're, you know, limited in time. But that's always really helpful and great to see in the reviews, because it makes me think like, yes, I should go back and make this a little bit clearer and I can clean this up.
Yeah, I mean, just for what it's worth, like that's kind of my process. And you know, I'm still earlier in my career, but I definitely get a working, I don't know, MVP of what I'm working on. And then before I put it up for review from my peers, I go through it and I look for places where I might be able to make it a little better, a little clearer, a little more efficient. You know, whatever, where I can refactor and clean things up and make it, you know, a bit more polished before I ask them to start reviewing it. But for me to get kind of caught in my head on those details while I'm building, it just slows me down. So it's much better to just get it working and then clean it up.
Yeah, no,
For
I
me.
definitely agree. Like take a night, sleep on it, come back and look at it.
Yeah.
So this is like, I'm going to sell the opening, working in open kind of concept again, right? So it is very common for my team to create draft PRs. And then as you're going along and building and you're sharing it, you know, there are times where I put it up in the Slack channel and go, hey, these are the parts I'm confused in. These are the things. And then like, would someone help me look at this and give me some thoughts? So as you're asking for feedback early on, people know that it's a rough draft, but then they're also trying to understand and then can give you really good feedback that you can move on from there. So a lot of times, this is the benefit of working in public, and it is scary, but you're putting yourself out there, you get the feedback sooner and you can cycle through, and the learning process is a lot faster. But yeah, that's really great. Everyone's really wonderful work. Like I'm good. Should we move on to retros?
Yeah, let's get going on that.
Okay, cool. I'm going to share a link and set a timer. And then after the timer, then we'll, I think, was it 7 minutes or 10 minutes?
I think either way. I did want to say maybe because we are kind of at the 20-minute mark for the timeline, like maybe if we can limit to the top 2, maybe 3 thoughts that you have for the week. I know, unless there's something, if you really have like things you need to get out there, but that way we can make sure we get the best use of our time.
Okay, so I'm going to set it for 7 minutes. And go.
Just as an FYI, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not logged in. Oh, that's what it is. I'm not logged in. Okay, I found the answer.
It works on my machine.
Yeah, right. Look at that. I have a plus button now.
We're about 2 minutes left. There's about 30 seconds left to finish your thought. Okay. And we are at time. How's everybody doing? Cool. Anybody else need more time? Nope. I'm still trying to figure out Zoom on just my laptop. This is like the sort of digital nomad life. I'm like only on a laptop in a weird Airbnb bedroom as my office. Okay, so let's start with appreciations. So let me know if you can't see my screen. But let's start with Connie.
Yep. Yeah, I really appreciate our dedication to accessibility first rather than making an afterthought. I think it's better to address it now than later, and it shows that it's really a priority for us. So great job, and thank you.
And then next is Nick.
Yeah, so I was just saying thanks to Ander for really thinking through our issue a little more than I did initially, and seeing that there was kind of something that didn't make sense with the the way it was written, and then ultimately us deciding to do that little bit extra to make that created that, and using the server timestamp. I guess I'm more like lean on the side of just like following directions. So I was like, I think a little initially hesitant, but when we were working through it, I definitely saw that they're right. So.
And April.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for just the efforts that you've been putting into communicating, the side meetings and conversations that you've had, the decisions that you've been making as a team. Hey, I saw this thing and I wanted to refactor it. What do y'all think? All of that has been really awesome. So great.
And then Ander.
Yeah, I said that I've had a lot of fun working with Connie on some accessibility stuff, and have really appreciated her enthusiasm taking on some extra tasks with me and like learning new things together. Because sometimes, we don't always have the time, but it's great when we do to go a little above and beyond, even if it isn't required. It does, like, we've learned so much that we wouldn't have learned just doing the bare minimum to meet the AC.
Oops, didn't mean to do that. Cameron.
I just want to send some appreciations to Ander for bringing very good questions to the open. I think it resulted in all of us learning a lot this week. And I also wanted to give thanks to your patience in answering the sorting questions this week, because it seemed like you were all over that.
Sheila.
I just wanted to thank Ander for working with me and Connie on accessibility. And it kind of inspired me, or made me start like really reading about it and learning during like my free time.
That's great to hear.
April.
Yeah, just Cameron and Yenli. It's been really good. It's my first time doing this, and so like our teamwork together has been super awesome. So thank you.
And Connie. Oh.
Hey, sorry. I appreciate all the moments that I've been able to learn more about React hooks, use effect, accessibility, and React in general. So thank you all for teaching me and showing me new concepts.
Nick.
Yeah, just thanks to the mentors for talking through our issue with us early on. I know there was a lot of discussions that happened, at the beginning of last week, which is earlier than normal, but it really helped us, shape what we were going to do. So thanks.
Shout out to April and Cameron for, the extra support to the team this week. I've been on the road last weekend and then also suffering through just adjusting. So really appreciate that. And then just for the team's flexibility to try new methods like mob programming and just supporting each other, like the quality of work that's coming out is quite impressive. Cameron.
I wanted to send a special appreciation to Yemi for bailing me out on the use effect question, despite the busy week. So thank you.
And then Connie.
Yep. Yeah, I really appreciate Andrew caring as much about improving our pairs code as the other pairs code. It really helps improve the code quality and makes for faster review cycles. So yeah, thank you, Andrew, for like just jumping in and immediately understanding what we're trying to do and like helping us refactor and make things better. So thank you.
And then Andrew.
Yeah, thanks to Yenli, April, and Cameron for helping me work through a whole bunch of different problems. I think all of you have jumped in the last couple weeks with really great suggestions, and it's really like helping me wrap my head more around React.
Great.
Ooh, and what went well? So Andrew again.
Yeah, I think that trying mob programming was really fun, like change of pace and a different way to work. And I think that was a really great suggestion.
Just want to say you're all my dream team. Like I don't need to explain it. April.
Yeah, there was we definitely seen an improvement in the PR reviews over the last couple of weeks, which is really helpful because then when there are things and suggestions and changes or questions, it doesn't feel quite so pressured for y'all as we cycle to the next week.
Sheila.
I was just thinking, like, I can see that our group really just works really well together as a team, and it's just been a great learning experience from working with everyone for me.
Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's been like, really cool that we've been able to go a little bit above and beyond and squeeze in some extra things. It's given more opportunities to learn new things.
April.
Yeah, just really impressed with your guys' ability to keep the momentum and finding your workarounds when you needed to, just adopting the mob programming and, putting your PR up for a quick review or a draft review or, so that the other team could take a quick look and guide you. Like that's awesome.
And then Nick.
I thought we all did great on our PRs this week, and especially just writing them and commenting to each other, and really doing great at explaining to the other team about stuff in comments. I feel like I learned a lot this week.
So I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. Super impressed with the team's flexibility and just delivering such high quality code. Like, yeah, I'm super, super impressed. Cam?
The group did a great job, and mentors did a great job of learning and teaching in the open this week. And I was very impressed with how that went this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like really stellar job in coordinating and mobbing, and then just all the great conversations that are going on in the code reviews. Like I'm really impressed when I'm reading through it. Like, yeah, and then just making the app accessible is super great. Like that is the best that I've seen so far. Connie.
Yeah, on a personal note, I would say my time management skills for Collab Lab and just getting code in and PRs has improved as the cohort has gone on. So yay me.
Good, yeah. What can be improved, Sheila?
It's that mine's just personal for me too. I was like, I need to get better with Slack because sometimes I'll see something and then forget what thread it's in and then have no way of answering back because I can't find the post. And so sometimes it might be like if you don't, somebody doesn't get an answer from me like right away, sometimes it's just because I'm trying to figure out where they put it in, where they put it at.
I think that's really great that you can call that out in front of all of us. And like, if there's any way any of us can help you, go through and pair and figure out things on Slack, that's also another option. It doesn't have to be code. So let us know how we can support you and improve in that.
Okay.
Nick?
Yeah, so this is just a comment about the program. And I think I don't really have solution for this. I know it's really challenging, but just the issues can be just vastly different in scope and challenge. Like I wrote here, I think there was one a couple of weeks ago that was really easy, and I feel like I solved it in like 45 minutes. And then, Andrew and I had the one this week that was just an absolute bear, and it was really tough. And that's gonna happen, but I think maybe just like keeping it in mind for the program is just good going forward.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. And just a comment on that is you're getting the real world experience. Yeah. And just how tasks gets separated, right? Like some things are very clear, some things are not. And I think the mob programming really comes in. So as a mentor, when I hear this, I realize like, oh, next time I'm going to suggest the mob programming versus the pair for certain weeks when it's that kind of task. But yeah, that's really great feedback. Thank you. April.
Yeah, I didn't really have a lot that I could come up with for improved. I mean, you guys have taken the previous retros feedback and applied it. And I think we're just been really on point lately. And so way to go.
Second that. Ander.
So yeah, just a note that the sorting issue could be written a little bit more clearly. So I think it initially trips up pretty much everyone who sees it.
Yeah.
Cam.
Ditto.
I'll second that too. Ander again.
Yeah, I think like I've been noticing how much I really benefit from like reading things over again the next day and having a fresh perspective. It's a little tricky with pair programming because there's not always time to do that, especially with like monster issues like we had this week. But it's definitely something that like I am taking away from this experience and want to put into my workflow.
And Connie.
I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence on this actually, but the retros, I mean, we're doing so well now and it makes sense because we're at the end. So we've just improved over time. So if we were to do this for like a long time, I would suggest having retros less frequently as time goes on, just because we just seem to do things better and better. So.
Great. So I wanted to finish off by saying I didn't have anything for what can be improved this week because y'all are like April said, you're on point, you're kicking butt. And retros for every 2 weeks is a practice to speak and verbalize your appreciation and to acknowledge the things that went well. And that's why the frequency. And it's great when you get to a point where it's like, we don't have anything to improve. We're just going to go yay us for this whole half an hour, which is great. So those are the things that you want to see in a team that is highly functional. And that's kind of my feedback in this team is like, y'all are really high functional, producing really great code. And there's so many takeaways that you can highlight and talk about in this experience in your job interview. And it's going to help you stand out among other candidates. So definitely write the notes, put these like your proud documents. These are the things to like put in there for job interviews. But yeah, that's it for retros.
I wanted to quickly touch on, Sheila, your comment in regards to getting better to Slack. One tip that I wanted to offer to you is that there is a way for you to have Slack remind you about a message. If you click on, I think it's the 3 dots on that message, like if you know you can't deal with that right now, but you don't want to lose it, you can set a reminder and Slack will come up and say, hey, you asked me to remind you about this message. And then you have some snooze options from there. So if when it comes up again, you still don't have time, etc. But it's a nice way, and I use it a lot when I have something that I've read, but I can't deal with it or don't have the information right now.
I'm gonna try to use that.
Yeah.
So one other mental model I do want to share is from one of the lead engineers that I recently worked with. He makes it a point to check configs for every new application that he used, just because that's just his mental mindset. So he can, like, I don't do it because I'm just too lazy. I only need to know what I need to know at the bare minimal to get done. I just don't have that habit. But the fact that he shared, he's like, when I have to use a new app, I dig into all the options, all the settings that's available, because that's just how he works. And he knows how to config and do everything. And it's just like, it's kind of interesting with that perspective. He used to work at Slack, but just something to think about as an option or mental model. Cam, issues.
Issues. I need to share my screen. Are you all able to see my screen here?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Great. So congratulations. This is a week you've been waiting for. It's design week. So the last 2 weeks of this project will function a little differently. Your team will self-organize around a lightweight design process. It's listed below. This will require you to make decisions together as a whole team, then implement your vision. The process outlined here is our best suggestion for how to proceed, but you're free to take whatever approach you see fit. You'll notice that this is the last issue on the board. That's because the expectation for you is to write the stories needed to complete the implementation of your design direction. As always, lean on your mentors for guidance, and if you're unsure how to proceed, reach out. So the design process is as follows. The first step should be to decide what the tone of the app is going to be. There's a list here, like fun, clean, ironic, business-like. I haven't actually opened the examples, but that could be very interesting as well, I believe. Create a mood board. Helps everyone get on the same page in terms of the direction in which you want to take your design. To decide on fundamental elements of your design, including the following: typography, colors, iconography, imagery. As someone who is married to a graphic designer, this makes a whole world of difference to actually focus on this for a bit. Decide whether you want to code your CSS from scratch or integrate a framework. There are pros and cons to each, which I'm sure you are all aware of. And if you choose a framework, evaluate your options to make sure you pick one that suits your needs. Consider the following: quality of documentation, ease of integration, built with accessibility in mind, which I'm sure will be a forefront for you all, and activeness of the community. Well, there are frameworks where people don't respond to anything, and then there are frameworks that have very active communities around it that can answer your questions, it seems like, day or night. Yenli, do you know if I need to actually do the pairing for this week, since it's, are there any questions with that in mind?
Are we, so we're doing this for the last 2 weeks, but are we still doing like 1 week sprints kind of thing? So we're still meeting next week, still doing the PRs by the same like schedule, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So this is going to be the super fun process, right? Like, so the next 2 weeks we can change how we want to work and as a team decide. And this is the fun part: is you can choose to pair, you can choose to work on individual issues, you can choose to mob if you want. A lot of this is up to you as a team to decide. And in these PRs, you, at this point, like, the team is functional so great that you don't need mentor review on your PRs unless you want it. So we want to leave it free flowing for you to figure out, you know, as you are going through the design process in the beginning, you break down these tasks, right? Like, you design, you decide, and then the part of the fun is breaking down these tasks and how to get to there. So you can phase it as in the first week, what you want to get done, and then the second week to get to that. All is that up to you as a team to decide. And as you're building PRs, like let's say one person feels really strongly about one thing, they can pick it up and do it. So how much you want to flow as a team and how you organize, it's also like a fun process of this, you know. And that's why we don't, we say like you don't need mentor reviews, because you can move as fast as you want. And if you really like something that you're really unsure, you can always add us as a review and go, hey, it's the same thing that I'm talking about for working in public. You just put it out there and say, hey, you know, we're not sure about this. Can you help me? Can you look at this? We want your feedback, and just ping us and we will jump in and give feedback whenever you need it. But if you can feel that you are strong and you want to just keep going and get to a certain place, then we also want to get out of your path and let you do it. So that's the purpose of this. And this is where we see teams, my last cohort, the team just like, they were so excited when they got this, they just went boom, and just like you could spend the first week just on design and not code, right? So they spent the first week on design, building out Figma, building all these stuff. And the second week, they just like went crazy with PRs and checking in things, and everything was flying. And they were just committing code up until like Saturday. And it was like a frenzy of activity. And then by the final sync, like everything was all ready to demo. And that was pretty exciting to watch. And I didn't really have to do anything. They just commit all the things, and it was just pretty amazing process. So yeah, does that answer everybody's questions in what the expectations are in terms of how you can work or want to work?
Cool.
Cool.
Thank you, Yenli. I'm going to stop sharing, but I think that takes us to the end here for this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be doing office hours, so I will put up something in Slack for this week. But yeah.
All right.
All right.
As always, reach out on Slack if you need anything from us. And I look forward to seeing your designs.
Labbies, do you want to like stay on just a few minutes to talk about how we want to proceed, given that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Let me transfer host. I'll transfer it over to you then, Connie.
And you probably want to end recording as well.
And I will end recording.
Okay.